Alright, lesson 2 for the people that are coming back. I'm going to start a new composition. I'm going to change the time to 10 seconds. Click OK. And I'm going to drag up the timeline so I can see a little better. And I'm going to start by making 3 shapes and do a little review here. I'm going to change the color of the first one to green. I'm going to hold shift to make a perfect square, and I'm going to click on the number for the pixels for the stroke here. And I'm going to click on the shape. The anchor point's in the middle, so I need to center it by pressing Control Alt Home. So go ahead, press pause, make a square, center the anchor point, Control Alt Home. Alright, unpause. Now what I'm going to do is rename this, so I'm going to make sure that the layer is selected by clicking on it, pressing Enter. I'm simply going to name it 1. Alright, now what I want to do, this is a review. I'm going to create a circle. I'm going to change the fill to blue, and you'll see that this changes as well. That's because I have this layer selected. So what happens when you have a layer selected and you add another shape? Well, you're just putting it on that layer. I don't want that. So I'm going to press Control Z. And I'm going to make sure this layer is deselected. And now I'm going to hold Shift and make a circle. Again, pressing Control Alt Home to center the anchor point. I'm going to press V for the move tool, and I'm going to move this here. Go ahead, press pause, and do that. Unpause. Okay, so we should have created a shape layer here and centered the anchor point. I'm going to press Enter and name it 2. I'm going to deselect the layers by clicking over here. I'm going to create. This shape here, a pentagon, and I'm going to press Control Alt Home and center the anchor point. Okay, so now we have 3 shapes, and I'm going to press Enter and name this 3. Press pause and do that. Okay, now what we're going to do is cut these layers. So remember, zooming in on the timeline, zooming out on the timeline. I'm going to stay zoomed halfway in. So I'll move this dial in the middle. I'm going to move my scrubber to 1 second. And I'm going to click on 1, and I'm going to trim it. So I'm going to press Control Shift D. That's going to split the layer in 2. It's going to split the layer before the scrubber, where I press Control Shift D, and after the scrubber. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the second part to the right of the scrubber. Now I'm going to click Layer 2. I'm going to press Control Shift D on Layer 2. And now that layer has been split before the scrubber and after the scrubber. I'm going to delete what is there before the scrubber. I'm going to move the scrubber to 2 seconds. Press pause and do what I just did. Unpause. Okay, now what I'm going to do again is press Control Shift D to split this layer before and after the scrubber. Looks like we're going to have to do some renaming. That's okay. So I'm going to delete after the scrubber. I'm going to click on this layer, press Enter, and rename it 2. Press pause and do that now. Okay, unpause. I'm going to click on Layer 3. I'm going to split this as well. Press Control Shift D. I'm going to delete what's before the scrubber. And now I'm going to click on the top layer, press Enter, and rename it Layer 3. Now I'm going to take the scrubber to 3 seconds. I'm going to press Control Shift D. It's going to split the layer before the scrubber and after the scrubber. And I'm going to delete what's after the scrubber. Press pause and do that now. Now you see what we have are 3 layers that exist for 1 second following one another. The first layer, 0 to 1 second. The second layer, 1 second to 2 seconds. The third layer, 2 seconds to 3 seconds. Now what we're going to do is animate these, moving position, rotating, scaling, and opacity. I'm going to open up one, and now, since you watched the video in the first lesson, what I want you to do is animate this shape moving from here to here while it rotates, changes scale, and changes opacity. I'm going to do that now. You can do that and watch me, or you can press pause and do that now. I'm going to turn on position, turn on scale, turn on rotation, turn on opacity. And I'm going to drag the scrubber in the middle of the layer. I'm going to drag this shape to the middle of the screen. I'm going to drag the percentage of the scale to the left. I'm going to change the 0x on rotation to 1, and I'm going to change opacity somewhere around 50%. Now I'm going to drag the scrubber to 1. I'm going to move the shape to the lower right hand corner of the screen. I'm going to change the scale back to 100%, change the rotation to 0, and change the opacity to 100%. So now what I have is a shape that changes scale, opacity, it rotates while it moves position, and then it disappears where we trimmed it, and now the next shape appears. So what I want you to do is do the same thing for this layer, and then do the same thing for this layer. So you're going to be animating the position, rotation, scale, and opacity. I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Where you move it is not important. How you change the scale is not important. What I care about is that you know how to change the position, scale, rotation, and opacity. Where they go is up to you. Okay. Now what we have are 3 layers that are animated. They end after 1 second each and following one another. Now on the timeline, what we're going to do is called pre-compose these layers. So if you're familiar with Photoshop, it's the same as merging layers. So I want you to select each one of these layers while holding the Control button, and then right-click on one of the layers, choose Pre-compose, title it Shapes, press Enter, press pause, and do that now. Unpause. Now what we have are 3 layers that have been combined to save space on the timeline into one layer. You ask yourself, what happens if you want to go inside of one of these layers and change an animation? You can still do that. If you double click the pre-composed layer, it takes you inside of that pre-composed layer, as you see here. Here's the composition that we were just working in. I double click shapes, and it takes me inside the shapes tab. So now I have all my layers with the animations that I can change. So in this module, you've learned how to pre-compose layers, you've learned how to trim layers, and you've learned how to create different shapes. And you've learned how to go inside the pre-composed layers. So what I want you to do now, at 3 seconds, is press Ctrl-Shift-D, delete this shape, and I want you to create a scene that lasts for 5 seconds, so it's going to last from 3 seconds to 5 seconds. And it's going to be this. I want you to watch what I do first, and then do it yourself. You're going to pre-compose these layers, name them ball bounce, press enter, and at 3 seconds and 5 seconds we're going to trim this layer. Control-Shift-D, select the section of the layer before the scrubber, press delete, take the scrubber to 5 seconds, make sure the top layer is selected, press Control-Shift-D, delete the section that appears after the scrubber. And then at the end, I want you to type your name. With the text tool, click on the screen, type your name, press Control-A to select your name. In the character section on the right-hand panel, increase the font size. Center the anchor point of the layer, Control-Alt-Home. Center the layer to the screen, Control-Home. Trim this layer at 5 seconds, Control-Shift-D, press delete. And that is all. You can stop there.